There was a psychological mistake made by millions of ordinary people in Nazi Germany, a terrifying mental glitch, and the unsettling truth is, you're probably making the exact same mistake every single day. We look back into that dark pit of history and ask the impossible question: how? How did regular people, shopkeepers, teachers, parents, people who almost certainly thought of themselves as decent and good, come to accept and even take part in the unthinkable? It's easy to just label them all as monsters, to draw a thick line between them and us, but that's a dangerous lie. The real answer is far more disturbing, because they weren't all monsters, they were human. This isn't just a history lesson. It's about the very architecture of your mind, and how the same flaw that helped make an atrocity possible then is quietly shaping your choices right now. And they fell for a mental trap that's built into every one of our brains. A hidden flaw in our mental software that runs silently just beneath the surface of our awareness. In 1957, the social psychologist Leon Festinger gave it a name: cognitive dissonance, but its roots go even deeper, touching on those unseen corners of the mind that the great psychologist Carl Jung would have called our shadow. This isn't just a history lesson, it's about the very architecture of your mind, and how the same flaw that helped make an atrocity possible then is quietly shaping your choices right now. To get what this mental glitch is all about, we have to travel not to 1930s Germany, but to Stanford University in 1959. This is where Leon Festinger and his colleague Merrill Carlsmith ran a legendary experiment designed to catch this mental culprit in the act. The setup was devilishly simple. They had student volunteers do a mind-numbingly boring task for a full hour, turning wooden pegs on a board over and over and over again. It was designed from the ground up to be tedious, pointless, and zero fun. After the hour was up, the experimenter let the student in on a little secret. He'd say, "We're studying how expectations affect performance. For the next participant, we need them to believe the task is actually fun and exciting. Would you be willing to go tell the next person, who was secretly an actor, that the boring task was genuinely interesting?" This is where the trap was set. The students were being asked to tell a bald-faced lie. But here's the twist. The students were split into two groups. One group was offered $20 to tell the lie, a pretty hefty sum of money back then. The other group was offered a paltry $1. Now, which group do you think ended up actually believing the task was fun? Common sense says it's the group that got paid more. But Festinger predicted the opposite, and he was spot on. It was the group that was paid only $1 who later rated the boring task as significantly more enjoyable. Why? This is the absolute core of cognitive dissonance. The group paid $20 had an easy out for their lie. They felt no inner conflict. Their brain could say, "I'm an honest person, but I lied for a good reason. I got $20. The action, lying, and the belief, "I'm honest," were in conflict, but the big reward was a perfect bridge to resolve the tension. But the students paid only $1 had a huge problem. Their brains were buzzing with psychological friction. The thought, "I'm an honest person," clashed violently with, "I just sold out my integrity for a measly, insulting dollar." The discomfort is intense, and the human mind hates feeling inconsistent. It can't hold two contradictory ideas for long without trying to fix the tension. So, what gave? They couldn't take back the lie. That was already done. So the brain did something incredible. It rewrote the memory. It changed the belief. Unconsciously, their minds decided the most logical explanation wasn't that they were cheap liars, but that the task wasn't actually that boring to begin with. They convinced themselves they enjoyed it, because believing that was way less painful than believing they were sellouts. This isn't just about making excuses. It's a deep, unconscious defense mechanism meant to protect our ego and preserve our self-image as a good, logical person. Your brain is a storyteller, and you are always the hero of your own story. When your actions threaten to paint you as a villain or even just a fool, your brain will subtly rewrite the script of reality itself to protect its main character. And here's where we can bring in a fascinating, if interpretive, parallel from the work of Carl Jung. Jung believed our conscious personality, the mask we show the world, which he called the persona, is only half the story. Beneath it lies the shadow, all the parts of ourselves we've disowned, our raw instincts, our greed, our fears, and our capacity for cruelty. Cognitive dissonance is often the alarm that blares when an action driven by our unacknowledged shadow clashes with the perfect image of our persona. When we do something out of a shadow impulse, like a petty need to conform, our conscious mind scrambles to find a noble reason. The lie we tell ourselves is the bridge between what our shadow did and what our persona needs to feel righteous. Think about the endless scroll of social media. You see curated lives, perfect vacations, and expensive possessions. The urge to want what somebody else has, a classic shadow impulse of envy, bubbles up. When you make a choice based on that urge, like buying something you don't really need, the dissonance hits. Your persona, which sees itself as thoughtful and not materialistic, clashes with the action. So the mind scrambles to justify it, creating a noble reason to bridge the gap. Now let's return to the 1930s. And to be crystal clear, the horrifying success of the Nazi regime wasn't caused by a single psychological quirk. It was a perfect storm of factors, relentless propaganda, a deep-seated obedience to authority, which Stanley Milgram's famous 1960s experiments would later explore, an immense pressure to conform. But cognitive dissonance was a crucial internal mechanism that allowed ordinary people to justify their place in that storm, one small, rationalized step at a time. It didn't start with a demand for mass murder. It started with much smaller choices. Imagine you're an ordinary German citizen in 1933. You see yourself as a good person. You value kindness and your community. A boycott of Jewish-owned shops is announced. You walk past a store owned by a man you've known for years. You see the brown shirts outside. You feel a pang of discomfort. Your belief is, I'm a good neighbor. I don't support injustice. But your action is to lower your gaze, cross the street, and just walk by. You do nothing. The dissonance hits instantly. To resolve it, your brain gets to work. The rationalization begins. It's better not to get involved. I have a family to look after. This is just politics. It'll blow over. What could I do anyway? You justify your inaction by downplaying the event's importance. Your core belief hasn't changed, but it's been softened. Standing against injustice is subtly demoted below keeping my family safe. A few years later, the pressure has ramped up. Maybe you're a civil servant, and a new law requires you to process paperwork that strips Jewish citizens of their rights, or fire a Jewish colleague. The dissonance is much louder now. Your persona says, I have professional integrity. Your action is direct participation in persecution. The $1 lie now feels like a $100 lie. The rationalization has to get stronger. I'm just following orders, you tell yourself. A classic move to displace responsibility. If I don't do it, someone else will, and they might be crueler. By staying, I can at least minimize the harm. You start to frame your complicity as a form of mitigation. But for that to stick, your beliefs have to shift more. You start to internalize the dehumanizing propaganda. You start to think, maybe there is something to what they're saying. It's much easier to process paperwork against a problem than against your neighbor. It's years later. The policies have become extermination. You see neighbors rounded up and forced onto trains. You hear the rumors. The dissonance is almost unbearable. To admit now that you are wrong means facing a terrifying truth. That every justification you made was a lie. That your small compromises were rungs on a ladder leading directly to this horror. The psychological cost of that admission is catastrophic. It would shatter your entire self-concept as a good person. So the brain's defense mechanism goes into overdrive. It becomes easier to warp your entire worldview than to accept your role in this. The rationalization becomes total. They must have done something to deserve this. We are fighting for our survival. The victims are completely dehumanized. And at that point, the dissonance is gone. The action, looking away from an atrocity, is now in perfect harmony with the belief that the atrocity is necessary. The transformation is complete. This is what some might view through a Jungian lens as the activation of a collective shadow. The Nazi ideology gave a voice to the unacknowledged darkness of a nation, its resentments, anxieties, and prejudices. It let millions merge their personal justifications with a massive, state-sanctioned one, making the descent feel like a shared journey. And in what could be seen as a chilling echo of this, one study found that intolerance and xenophobia are higher in German communities located closer to former concentration camps, hinting at how these powerful justifications might ripple across generations. It's tempting to keep this whole process sealed in the past, like a historical artifact behind glass. But that would be the biggest rationalization of all. This mental machinery, this ladder of escalating commitment fueled by cognitive dissonance, is running in your head right now. It shows up in the little everyday choices that slowly shape who you are. The Nazi mistake wasn't one single decision to be evil. It was the end result of 1,000 tiny, unconscious rationalizations, a cascade of justifications, each one seeming small, that together carved a path away from one's own values. It's the mistake of justifying the first step, and then the next, until you're miles from where you started, with no memory of ever choosing the destination. Let's bring this home. Think about your career. You take a job you don't love because the money's good. Dissonance kicks in. I believe life should be meaningful. Clashes with, I spend 40 hours a week doing something that feels empty. So you rationalize, it's just for a few years. Security is important. 5 years later, you're miserable, but you're also more invested. You've got a promotion. Quitting now would mean admitting you wasted 5 years. The dissonance is stronger, so the justification has to get stronger. Actually, the work isn't so bad. Quitting now would be irresponsible. You've changed your belief to justify the path you're on, trapping yourself. Or what about consumerism? You buy an expensive new phone you can't really afford. The dissonance screams, I'm financially responsible, versus I just went into debt for a gadget. You don't return it. Instead, you spend hours reading glowing reviews, convincing yourself it was the right choice. It's an investment. The quality means it'll last longer. I deserve it. You're not seeking information. You're seeking confirmation to soothe your buyer's remorse. This is the engine of our daily health choices. You believe in being healthy, but you eat a slice of cake. The dissonance is that pang of guilt. The rationalization is instant. I had a stressful day. I'll start fresh tomorrow. It's all about balance anyway. Each time, you weaken your original belief just a little, making the next mistake easier to justify. It even runs our lives in this polarized world. We all believe we're open-minded, but we almost exclusively consume news that confirms what we already think. When we see something that challenges our political team, it creates intense dissonance. Instead of grappling with the idea that we might be wrong, it's way easier to rationalize. That source is biased. Those people are nuts. It's fake news. We protect our beliefs not by testing them, but by building a fortress of justifications around them. In every case, the pattern is the same. A choice creates a conflict with a belief. To feel better, we don't change our behavior. We quietly edit our belief. We slide down a slippery slope, greased by our own self-deception, all while believing we're in total control. So, if this flaw is built into our brains, are we all just puppets of our own rationalizing minds? No, the solution isn't to become perfectly rational robots. That's impossible. The solution is awareness. Cognitive dissonance isn't your enemy. It's a signal. Think of it as a smoke alarm for your integrity. It's your gut telling you that your actions and your values are out of sync. The mistake isn't feeling the dissonance. The mistake is unconsciously silencing it with a cheap justification. The antidote is to learn to sit in that discomfort for a moment, hold the tension, and listen to what it's telling you. When you feel that urge to explain away an action, pause. Ask the hard question. Am I changing my beliefs to justify my behavior, or is my behavior reflecting my beliefs? This is the heart of what Carl Jung called individuation, the courageous, lifelong process of making the unconscious conscious. It's the work of turning to face your shadow, of acknowledging the parts of you that are scared or greedy or just want to fit in. By seeing those parts, you rob them of their power to drive your actions from the dark. You get to choose to act from your values rather than having your brain invent values to match your impulses. This is a daily practice. It's journaling to have an honest conversation with yourself. It's noticing what you get defensive about. It's developing self-awareness. Your brain will always try to spin a coherent story where you're the hero. But only you, through conscious awareness, can decide if that story is leading you toward a future you actually want, or if it's just a beautiful cage built of your own rationalizations. We all fall into these traps. It's the price of being human. So let's make this a space for reflection. What's one small rationalization you've caught yourself making this week? Share it in the comments below. By bringing these little shadow justifications into the light, we weaken their power over all of us.